Hi guys! Do you have an area in your garden where whatever you plant in it, it just seems to wither and die? If that's you, you're going to want to stick around because today we are going to talk about 10 beautiful plants that are going to be perfect for your problem area. If you are new here, my name is Chantal. I garden in Zone 5B, 6A, New Hampshire. Welcome to my plant room. I'm going to first start with the foundation plants. Those are going to be your trees and shrubs. The first plant on my list are junipers. Junipers are great because they are drought tolerant and they can handle heavy rains for an extended period of time, as long as they have a well-draining soil. The trick is they just don't like to sit in the water. So if your soil is not well-draining, you may want to lift the base of the root ball about 1 to 2 inches above the soil level to facilitate drainage. You can also mix some sand and compost into your soil. That's going to enhance the drainage and nutrients of your soil. The nice thing about junipers is that you have one for every space. If you have a slope and you want a juniper that's going to create a mound or going to crawl down the slope, junipers are great for that. Some of those varieties include mounding and creeping junipers. And if you're trying to cover a large area, you also have some that are wide and tall that will be perfect for that kind of space. And if you have a narrow space, something like Spartan juniper, blue point juniper, skyrocket juniper are going to be perfect for that. The Spartan juniper is going to grow up to 5 feet wide and 15 feet tall and has a beautiful emerald green color, while the blue point juniper and the skyrocket juniper are going to grow about 2 to 3 feet wide and 15 feet tall, and they have a nice blue hue to them. They are perfect for narrow spaces and close to your home. Just make sure to place them far enough from your foundation so that you do not destroy your foundation and from the eaves of your home. I have 3 of these junipers, the Spartan juniper, the skyrocket juniper, and the blue creeping juniper, and I love them all. The second plant on my list are lilacs. These are a spring blooming shrub and they have a wonderful fragrance. I have 3 lilacs, 2 of which are of what I believe to be a Japanese variety. These are great for creating a privacy hedge because they do mound, but they also tend to sucker. So if that's something that you do not necessarily like, you might want to choose a different variety. But the fragrance on this variety is magnificent. I love the fragrance on this variety. The other variety of lilac that I have is a white double blooming lilac. I don't know the exact species of that lilac and I have yet seen it to bloom because I planted it as a 1 foot tall shrub. And the first season that it was ready to bloom, the deer came and munched the buds off. And these do bloom on new wood. So if you want to prune them, you'll have to prune them right after they are done blooming. But they also come in many different varieties and sizes, so you can place them in the back of the border or in the middle of the border. Lilacs can take on drought like a champ, once established of course, but that doesn't mean that they don't like the water. They just like to be in a well-draining soil. And they can take high pH. The third plant on my list are deutzias. These are a low mounding shrub. They are also a spring bloomer. They get completely covered with blooms and they are great for the front of the border. But I can't tell you how they smell because I have never attempted to smell mine. Maybe I should. I have mine planted on a steep slope. They are wonderful for controlling erosion, but I don't ever remember watering them except for the first 2 seasons after planting them. Once established, they can be on their own. And we have even gone through multiple summer droughts and you can't even tell. But I'm sure if I were to water them, they would perform even better and grow bigger. But I don't. I don't spray them, I don't fertilize them, I don't water them, I don't do anything to them, and they look amazing all season long. The fourth plant on my list are weigelas. These are a spring blooming shrub that bloom on old wood, but there are newer varieties that are rebloomers. But the nice thing about this type of shrub is their foliar color. Once they are done blooming, their foliage makes an excellent statement in the garden because they come in a variety of shades. You have some that are variegated, some that have a red wine foliage color, some that have a green foliage with a little bit of red veining. You get the picture. These are also drought tolerant, but they do love the water and they need a well-draining soil. They are also tolerant of high pH. I'm telling you, these plants are amazing. The fifth plant on my list is the black lace elderberry. These are also a spring blooming shrub, but forget the blooms. Even though the blooms are gorgeous, the foliage display on them is even better and more gorgeous. They have feathery like burgundy leaves and they can grow up to 15 feet tall. So those are going to be great for the back of the border because they will create this depth and make your garden look even bigger. But when it comes to their resilience, these plants are it. They can tolerate drought, terrible soil, high pH, clay soil, and all sorts of weather. But that doesn't mean that they don't love the water. These plants can even live in a boggy soil. So if you have an area in your garden that tends to stay wet, the black lace elderberry is going to love it. I have mine planted on the top of a hill. I believe I planted it last spring, so I still have to baby it. But once these plants are established, you can just let them be. Of course, that goes without saying that if you do want your plants to perform better, you do have to water them and fertilize them. Oh, and I forgot to mention that these do bloom on new wood. Okay, now we are going to talk about the perennials. I thought that I would split the list evenly between the shrubby plants and the perennials. So the 6th plant on my list is the Rosemint Agaki. This plant is not only resilient, but is also a great hummingbird and pollinator attractor, and has a wonderful fragrance. It grows about 3 feet tall and about 2 feet wide, and it puts on a wonderful show of blooms all the way from midsummer to late fall. It stays in bloom for about 4 to 6 weeks, if not even more. And once it's done blooming, it still looks good. This plant is drought tolerant and needs a well-draining soil, but it can also take heavy rainfalls as long as it is in a well-draining soil. So if you're going to water it, make sure to allow the soil to dry between watering, because you don't want to drown your plant. And when I say drought tolerant, it doesn't mean that this plant can live without water. It means that this plant can live without water for an extended period of time, but it still needs some water to survive. And one more thing about Rosemint Agaki is that it can tolerate high pH soil. So if you have high pH soil, you are in luck, because I think most of the plants that I'm listing right now can tolerate high pH. The 7th plant on my list is lavender. Like the Agaki, lavender is also drought tolerant, attracts the pollinator, and has a beautiful fragrance. I love the Munstead variety for its resilience. It can take harsher weather and more rainfall than other lavender varieties, but of course it does need a well-draining soil. This variety can grow about 2 to 3 feet wide and about 2 feet tall with the blooms. Its blooms are silvery purple in color. They are not the most stunning blooms when it comes to lavender varieties. There are other varieties that have deeper and richer bloom colors, but the fragrance on this variety is out of this world. I love its fragrance. Lavender is also tolerant of high pH, and it blooms early to late summer. The 8th plant on my list is the Siberian Iris. These bloom in mid-spring. The variety that I have has a gorgeous deep purple color, and its blooms look stunning against the blooms of the Weigela because they both bloom around the same time. These can live in a bog, but they can also be surprisingly drought tolerant. And I personally love their foliage and their seed heads. They look good all season long with their grass-like foliage. I personally would take a Siberian Iris over a daylily any time of the week. Although daylilies are a summer bloomer, but their foliage looks tired and tattered after they are done blooming, and I personally don't like that about them, because you do have to cut the plant back once it's done blooming and wait for about at least 2 weeks for it to reflush and look good again. The 9th plant on my list are hostas. And hostas are a shade-loving plant, but if you live in a northern climate, you can put your hostas in full sun as long as you give them ample water. You would think that a plant like hosta would require tons of water, but as long as you put it in the shade, it can take either dry shade or even boggy shade. And they are tolerant of acidic soil and high pH soil. They are such a versatile plant, and I believe every garden should have them. They do bloom mid to late summer, and they are a hummingbird attractant, but most people grow them for their foliage. I personally like their blooms because they do attract the hummingbirds, and I think they look beautiful. There are many different varieties of hostas, probably hundreds if not even thousands, and don't quote me because I may be wrong. But there are also online hosta groups that you can join if you become a hosta fanatic yourself. And the 10th plant on my list is Echinacea. Echinaceas are wonderful because they can tolerate all different types of soil composition and pH levels. They are also drought tolerant, a pollinator attractor, bloom all summer long through fall as long as you deadhead them, and they have attractive foliage. I mean, what more can you ask from a plant? And you have some tall varieties that can stand halfway through the border and some shorter varieties that can go in the front of the border. They are a workhorse plant, but one of my favorite things about echinaceas is that they do attract the yellow finches. If you do not deadhead them, their seed heads are a wonderful food source for the wildlife and are a favorite of the yellow finches. So in the fall, when they are done blooming, they still look like they are because the yellow finches sit at the seed heads pecking at them. And the plants look like they have these yellow fluffy blooms and are just so cute. I want to say I hope you guys enjoyed this video. And if you have found this video helpful, don't forget to share this video with someone that will also find this video helpful. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again in the next video. Bye!